Okay, today we are going to do something that I have made for my children for years. They absolutely love it. And it's a cake that's from scratch that you can do. It's going to seem a little bit tedious and complicated, but it's really not. And I promise you, you can make it. Okay, so let's get started. It's the Hershey's Perfectly Chocolate Cake. And if you can get the, for the recipe, all you have to do, I'm going to leave it down below, but you can get it off the label of the Hershey's Cocoa Box. It's usually always on there. It tells you how to make the cake from scratch, and it also tells you how to make the frosting. We're going to do both. I've done it for years. It's not difficult. So let's get started on this. We need 2 cups of sugar and 1 3/4 cups of flour. We're going to use self-rising flour. There's nothing wrong with doing that. The recipe does call for all-purpose and baking powder and baking soda or salt. But that's fine. You don't have to use that. You can use self-rising flour. It still works the same. Only without all the additives. So 2 cups of sugar is what we'll need. So let me see if I can use these things to put this out. Okay, so there's 1. 2. And 1 3/4 cup of flour. Let's see, I don't know. Yeah, this is my 1/4 cup measure. So there's 1, 2, and 3. All right. Now, next thing that we need to do is add our cocoa, because we're going to have to sift this, all of our dry ingredients, and it does take a lot of cocoa. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So the next thing will be sifting the dry ingredients together. You need to get out any lumps. And while you're sifting it, you're actually combining everything together. So let's get that done. Look with the lid on the hot chocolate. The cocoa. Before I spill it. And I've already got our pan greased. The recipe calls for round cake pans. I've always made this in an oblong baking dish. It's just easier. I don't have to pop out a bunch of cakes and try to layer it. I can do a layer cake with no problem. I've done that before, but it's just easier doing it in a 13 by 9, I believe is the measurement, glass baking dish. And I've already got that greased and ready, and I've already got our oven preheated. All right, so next thing, and then we need to add to the dry ingredients are 2 eggs. I've already got those in a bowl, and I beat them just a little bit, so they would be a little broke up there. We need a cup of milk. And 1/2 cup of oil. Of vegetable oil. It could be that, or it could be canola. It doesn't matter. Just 1/2 cup of oil. Okay. Make sure we got all the milk out. Alright, so what I like to usually do whenever I'm making a cake is just kind of, before I put the mixer in, try to combine it just a little bit so we don't have a lot of flour and sugar going everywhere. Just a little bit. Okay. And we needed to go ahead and put in our vanilla. which I believe is, let's see, 2 teaspoons. I'm just gonna eyeball it. Okay, that's good. All right, let me get this mixer in here. Okay, so the last thing that you're supposed to do with this cake batter before you put it in the oven is, and I know it sounds crazy, you're supposed to add 1 cup of boiling water to the batter. So I've already got that ready. And it says to stir it in. Maybe I need to use a spoon because it's going to go everywhere. If I don't, let me get one of those. We'll see. So, and yes, you have to do this with the water. Now what it does, I don't know. I mean, I guess it kind of makes it very moist. And you're thinking, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. But it's just not. It is a really good cake. So, you just kind of stir it in. And it'll tell you on the label that it is supposed to be very watery or thin. To me, that's why the pan that I chose to bake it in is probably the best pan to use. Alright. Alright, so let's get this poured into the pan. Let me do something about these for the bigger mess. Alright, here we go. Get my spatula here. Pour it into the pan. Get everything out. Okay. And that's what it'll look like. You see how runny it is? See? So we gotta put it in the oven. When it comes out, we'll be ready to ice it. Okay, so what I need to do for the icing, we're gonna go ahead and start it, or frosting as some people say. We call it icing here in Alabama. You melt a stick of butter, and what I want to do is before I do anything about combining my fat, which is my butter, with the sugar and the cocoa, before I do that, I want to get any lumps out of each one of those before I add it, because you don't want your icing to be kind of, ugly. So, let's see how much. We need 2/3 of a cup. I'll have to get another measuring cup. Let me find one real quick. Okay, so you need 2/3 of a cup of cocoa. And you'll add that to the butter first. But I want to kind of sift it just a little bit. Make sure we got the lumps out. Okay. We'll sift it just a little bit before I add it to my butter. Now, so you pour your butter back over, you add the cocoa. Okay. So combine it. This is butter and cocoa at this point. Nothing sweet. Not yet. Here we go. And try to combine it the best you can where it don't have all these lumps. But don't worry, when you start to add the sugar, you're gonna have a lot more practice trying to get all these lumps out. You just keep at it, it'll start smoothing out. set that aside for a second. Okay. The next thing that we need to add is our powdered sugar. Now, what we need to do with the powdered sugar is we also need to put it in a bowl so we can sift it. You need 3 cups of the powdered sugar. So 1, 2, and 3. Okay. And even though this is sifted, we need to sift it because we don't want any lumps. Okay. Now we need to look and see what it says to do. Alternately add powdered sugar and milk to this mixture. And you're going to keep beating it until you get it the consistency that you want to spread it. Okay, now it may require a couple of extra teaspoons at the end, but we'll find that out as we go. Okay, so I've already got my milk measured. It was supposed to be 1/3 cup of milk, 3 cups of the sugar. So we'll take a scoop, doesn't matter how much, and I'm going to put me some in there, a generous amount. That in. See if I can remember how to do this because it's been a long time. Okay, so it combined about as well as it's going to. Put a little bit of milk in there. So you have a fat, that's your butter, and you have your flavor, which is going to be chocolate, which was the cocoa. And then you have the sweetness, which is the sugar. Now, you could probably do this with a mixer, but I hate dragging my mixer out. And I do have a stand mixer, and I've got a hand mixer. Hand mixer I use most of the time because it's just more convenient. But this is just as good. It always worked for me, so I just use a whisk. All right, so now it's time to add a few more scoops of sugar. Okay, so I just like to combine it just a little bit before I add the milk. Just be patient with it. And just keep stirring. Okay, so as you can see, it's getting thicker. So before, it was just kind of a greasy chocolate mess. It kind of still is in a way, but it's getting a little bit too thick. Now it is spreadable at this point, but we're still not done. We got to get all this sugar in here. And we don't have that much milk left. So I'm going to pour the last of the milk, which is what they recommended, which was 1/3 cup. And usually what I do is I just keep the milk here. And then I just start adding a couple of teaspoons at a time, or tablespoons, whichever. You don't want it to be too much because you don't want it to be thin. So you have to do just a little bit at a time. So you got to be real patient. I mean, this is a really good cake, especially for somebody that's never done it from scratch. This would be a perfect one to start with. All right, so I added a little bit. I added all my milk and all my sugar. And as you can see here, now it's starting to look like icing. So let me finish mixing it all up, making sure that I've combined everything so it's all chocolate, not pieces of the sugar that's not combined. Sometimes you can look at the bottom of the bowl, especially if you did it in a clear bowl, and check to see if you got everything on the bottom. And I did. And it's perfect icing, see? You didn't have to worry about shortening. It was too cold or too warm or whatever. We just used a stick of butter, sugar, and cocoa. A real quick icing. As soon as the cake's done and it's cooled off, I'll ice the cake for you. Okay, so here's the cake. It's all finished. It's all cool. Cool to the touch. Here's the icing that we made. That was the same. The recipe is on the back of the same box of cocoa that the recipe for the cake came from. So you shouldn't have a hard time finding that. And you see the consistency. And I'm going to spread it on the cake. And it's just real easy. And it's really good too. So if you wanted to make this into a layer cake, I don't think you would have a problem at all. Okay, so here is a piece of the cake cut. And as you can see that it did plump up and rise up just like a regular cake box. Cake mix cake. Alright, that's it for today. I'll see y'all next time.